Can you see my screen? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Does it look, can you see the tabs on Chrome or just the presentation? Oh, okay. Okay. So I did forget my script at home. So I'm just going to read off of the notes that I had on my phone. Okay. So I don't have an intro. I asked Michael if he thought the Twilight Zone music was copyrighted, and he said yes. So
Which
very
music?
disappointing. The Twilight Zone, the TV show.
Oh.
But he said it's probably copyrighted, so we're not gonna play it. But I don't know how to do intros. He said we could just do like a title screen.
Like,
Well, yeah, if it's a video, you can just have like, well, if it's supposed to be a stream versus a video, then having a title stream like thing would work. I mean, you could have a countdown. You don't have to have, like say anything. But
I guess we could
3,
just do it.
2, 1.
So for today, the we're going to talk about Charles Starkweather. He's often been referred to as a modern day Clyde from Bonnie and Clyde, if you're familiar with their story. So
I think so.
Charles Starkweather, he was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was the fourth child out of 7 children. His mother,
Dang.
I know, 7 children. His father's name was Guy, and his mom's name was Helen. So Guy and Helen Starkweather. They were a working class. It's a very popular name, I guess. They were a working class family. His father was a carpenter, who actually had rheumatoid arthritis in his hands. So he struggled finding work. And because he was a carpenter, which is a job that you do with your hands.
Yeah.
Whereas Helen worked as a waitress, to kind of try and supplement the family's income because Guy struggled to find work. So Guy was actually an extremely abusive father and husband. During Charles's trial, he actually admitted to having shoved Charles out of a window in his adolescence.
Oh my gosh.
Well, also to think about the force that it takes to shove someone through a window, because well, I guess in those time windows were mostly single pane, so I guess it's not that hard to shove someone through a window. But
Yeah.
I was thinking when I read it for the first time, I was thinking like, oh my god, he has to like, because like I've seen people throw chairs at window. Yeah, I've seen people throw chairs at windows and like the chair bounces back. So I was like thinking in my head that had to be really hard, but no. Later on in life, his wife would end up divorcing him. So Helen and Guy did end up getting divorced due to the cruelty in his abuse. So in addition to the abuse that he suffered at his father's hands, he was also ridiculed and bullied in school. Starkweather was born with genuvarum, which is a mild birth defect, in which the legs are misshapen. So he was ridiculed
like
by his. Like what?
Like bow-legged? Or your legs are like bowled in or something?
Oh, I thought that was bow-legged. Is it bull?
Oh.
Oh, no, it's bow-legged. I was like, what? Yeah, I guess kind of like bow-leg. Actually, that's exactly what it is. The
Okay.
layman's terms for genuvarum is bow-leggedness.
Ah. Okay.
In addition to that, Charles also had a speech impediment.
Gosh. That sucks. Poor kid.
I know he really had it rough from the jump. He had it rough.
God.
So he did experience less bullying as he did get older, and also because he was bigger, he was able to excel in physical fitness. So he found an outlet for his rage by PE, sports, but also he began to bully the kids that had previously picked on him. He would take out his frustration and his rage on anyone, and he became like a bully against everyone. But originally, it did start as a way to counteract the in-school bullies. So he was only like really trying to go after the people that he claimed were bullying him. But then later on, he became a bully himself, and he would bully everyone in the school.
Like bully, like beat him up or call them names.
It says that that's how he took out his rage in a physical way. So I'm assuming he did sometimes probably
them
beat
up.
people up. But he went from being one of the most well-behaved teenagers in the community to one of the most troubled. So I guess when he was being bullied, he was a really good member of the community, but as soon as he was able to hold his own and defend himself and his rage began, he became a very troubled teen. One of his old high school friends later recalled, quote, "He could be the kindest person you've ever seen. He'd do anything for you if he liked you. He was a hell of a lot of fun to be around. Everything was just one big joke to him. But he also had his other side. He could be mean as hell, cruel. If he saw some poor guy on the street who was bigger than he was, better looking or better dressed, he'd try to take the poor bastard down due to his size." Unquote.
Jeez.
So he really had kind of like a double-edged personality. Like if he liked you, he was really kind, he was really caring, really sweet. But as soon as you like there was some
Like
kind of
threat.
perceived threat, yeah,
Right.
he was like the meanest person ever.
Oh my goodness.
So Charles did end up dropping out of high school, but by the time he dropped out of school, his parents were quoted as being afraid of him due to his violent outbursts. So even his parents were afraid of him.
Jeez. Can you imagine? Oh my gosh.
I could not.
That reminds me of that movie, The Good Son, with Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, I haven't
That
seen
was
it.
terrifying. You haven't seen the
Really?
movie? I thought we saw it at the same time, but
Oh,
it's a
no.
really old movie because it's when I was little. But yeah, he plays like a really psychotic kid, and then he like tries to kill his mom.
Oh my god. Actually,
Yeah.
I think I remember that, but not clearly. So
Yeah, because the kid or his cousin, whoever plays his cousin, he plays in he's that Hobbit in the Lord of the Rings. The one Frodo. Frodo. He plays Frodo. Remember that
he
actor?
plays Frodo? No. Frodo Baggins?
Yeah.
Oh, what is his name? Elijah Wood.
Yes. He plays the cousin of Macaulay Culkin's character in the movie.
Oh, I don't remember that movie. I vaguely remember being really scared of Macaulay Culkin for some reason,
Oh,
but
he's scary,
I
dude.
don't.
Just
I don't
because
remember.
of that movie.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. But
Which
Charles' story
is
did
funny.
actually inspire a lot of movies.
Oh, that might have inspired that one then. Macaulay Culkin is married to Brenda Song now. And he has
I
a kid with
saw
her.
that. I was like,
Yeah.
that's crazy. I don't even
Yeah,
imagine them being like the same age, but I don't know,
I
maybe they
know.
are.
I
It's
just
like,
thought that was the craziest thing ever.
yeah. I think when you're famous, the only people you could really date are other famous people. I don't know what it is, but they tend to like stick together. And I
think
feel like
'cause
Brenda
only
Song.
they-
Yeah,
I think because only they understand each other. 'Cause
yeah, it's true. But I think Brenda Song and Macaulay Culkin are probably like the same on the same level of acting because I haven't seen Macaulay Culkin in anything since like Home Alone. I know he's made a lot of things, but he's been probably like a B level actor after that.
Yeah.
And Brenda Song is like a Disney level actor, so
Yeah.
I think they're
Yeah.
like kind of on similar pages.
Yes.
Moving on. So Charles, when he was 18 in 1956, he was introduced to. Now, I think that it is kind of gross. So when Charles was 18 in 1956, he met. Oh, I just realized I don't know how to say her name. I've been calling her Carl, but I don't think it's Carl.
Carl.
Well, it's spelled Carl. Caril. Carol?
Carol? Yeah, it could be
I think
Carol.
Carol. Caril. Okay, I'm gonna say Carol. I don't know why I said Carl. I've been reading it Carl in my mind. I was thinking like that what is that the old YouTube video? Carl.
I've never seen that.
Oh. It was like a llama. They were like two llamas, but anyway. So Caril Ann Fugate. Now, Caril Ann Fugate was 13 when they met.
Ugh.
See, that's what I said. Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of.
No. It's because that 13 is little. 13 is
I
little.
know.
It's not like
I was like,
it's not
she's
like
a
he was 18.
baby.
Yeah. I think
So,
when
I
you're
don't
a
know.
teenager, you have to go out with your own age. You can't go higher or lower.
No lower.
Yeah.
He dropped out of high school his senior year and he got a job at a newspaper warehouse because it was close to Fugate's school. He began to visit her every day after school. He taught Carol how to drive. And one day she crashed the car that belonged to Charles's father, Guy.
Uh-oh.
And he actually banished after that car crash. Guy ended up kicking Charles out of the house. So after he got kicked out of his father's house, and he had to quit his job at the newspaper warehouse because he wasn't making enough money there. So he became a garbage collector so he could start to take care of himself. After this transition, he began to develop nihilistic worldviews, which is like basically where you hate the world, and you reject anything that is like culturally accepted. You begin to be like the outsider, um, things like that. And people believe that was kind of that was like the underlying cause of his crimes, and it would be the determinant for how he would live the rest of his life. So at this point, he began plotting bank robberies and settled on a personal philosophy: dead people are all on the same level.
Wow.
Yeah.
Deeply disturbed man. Kind of like a little like wimpy, if I should say. Like okay, sorry everyone like was mean to you and things didn't go your way. But like how often does that happen to people? Is he just like looking at people and being like, "Oh wow, they have it together," or "Oh, they have like all this stuff." Like no.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everyone's struggling. I don't get that.
It's easier to kill people than to be better. That's
I know, I guess.
that's the underlying. Some people would be the moment in the movie where there's that like self motivation montage where they're like working out or like doing like studies
Yeah.
and stuff, and he's like, skip that. Like if they're dead, they're not better than me.
Yeah.
So,
God, that's horrible.
yeah. So, so that's kind of like his backstory. So now to get into like what he actually did. So his on November 30th of 1957, when he was 19, Starkweather became angry at someone named Robert Culvert. He was a service station attendant. So he was somebody that worked at a gas station in Lincoln, Nebraska. He refused to sell him a stuffed animal on credit. So basically, Charles didn't have enough money for the teddy bear or for the stuffed animal. And the gas station attendant was like, I can't take IOUs. Like, you have to pay for the thing.
Yeah.
And so he became enraged. So he returned several times during the night to purchase small items until finally he took out a shotgun and forced Culvert to give him $100 from the till. And then he drove Culvert to a remote area where they struggled over the gun, injuring Culvert before Starkweather killed him with several shots to the head.
Oh
So,
my gosh. Over a
yeah,
teddy bear?
over a stuffed animal, yeah.
Oh my God. That was the thing that set him over the edge. Oh, I can't buy this little teddy bear.
That was the
Murder
last
him.
straw.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And it's crazy because he literally took him away from the gas station and took him somewhere else to kill him. Like, he had so many opportunities to just kill the man in the store and like walk away, but he didn't. He like took him in the car and he drove him to a remote area, which gave Culver the opportunity to even try and fight over the gun. And then ended up shooting him several times in the head in this like remote area.
So he essentially kidnapped him and then went somewhere else to kill him?
Yeah.
Weird. Why not just shoot him there? Like, hey man, give me my stuff. Okay. Bye.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking. I was like, it's because it kind of speaks to his psychosis at the time, because you could say like, oh, I went crazy for a second and just shot him. But he came back to the store several times through the night to buy like little things, let that rage build up until eventually he held him at gunpoint, said, give me money from the till, took $100 from the register, and then was like, you know what? Actually, get in the car. Like,
Yeah, I know. What is
you can't say like, oh, it was a momentary lapse. Like,
no.
over the whole night, like, you knew exactly what your plan was, what you were trying to do.
Yeah, it was calculated.
Yeah. Then that murder goes unsolved. They don't know who did it. He's not a suspect. Nobody really knows what happened to Robert, which is the
How long ago?
convenience.
How long ago was this? What year?
That happened in 1957.
Oh, okay. So there weren't like security cameras or video.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Probably too long ago.
So on January 21st of 1958, 2 months later, he went to Fugate's home, Caril, his girlfriend. He went to go pick up Caril, but Caril's mother and stepfather, Velda and Marion Bartlett, they told him to stay away. They told him that he wasn't good for Caril, that they didn't want him to see her anymore, which fair enough because she was 13 and, well, I think she's 14 at this point and he's 19. So fair enough. Like, I would have the same reaction if my kid wanted to date a 19-year-old, especially like a 9-year-old who dropped out of school and worked as a garbage man. So fair enough, but this enraged him to the point where he actually fatally shot them and then clubbed their 2-year-old daughter, Betty Jean, to death.
Oh my gosh! What the heck? That's like a billion times worse.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Yeah. So that brings his death toll up to 4 people. Robert Culvert, the gas station attendant, and then Velda and Marion Bartlett, Carol's mother and her stepfather, and then Carol's half sister Betty Jean. He hid the 3 bodies in the outhouse and the chicken coop behind their house. And later on, when he was being interviewed for his trial, as a part of his trial, Charles told the police that Carol was actually there the entire time. And witnessed the murders and helped him put the bodies in the outhouse and the chicken coop. However, Carol, during her interrogation, she said that she had not been home, that she arrived after the murders. But Charles said that Carol was there during the murders, witnessed it, and helped him hide the bodies in the outhouse.
I hope that's not true. I really hope that's not true.
According to Carol, she said that when she arrived home, Starkweather met her with a gun and said that her family was being held hostage. So she had no idea that they had been murdered. She had no idea where they were. He just said that they had been taken hostage. She said that Charles told her that if she shut up, cooperated with him, and did what he said, her family would be safe. Otherwise, they would all be killed. So that's her side of the story. But Charles says that she was an accomplice to the whole thing. She was aware of the whole thing. She knew exactly what happened, and she left with him. So her story is she was trying to save her family from Charles by coming along and doing what he said. But they left together. They were going to go on a road trip together, according to Charles. But they left a note on the front door saying everyone is sick with the flu, just in case anybody came by and wanted to inquire about absence at events or work, things like that. He just left a note that said everyone's sick with the flu. So
they just went on like what, a killing spree?
Yeah. So it had been a couple days past, and then Carol's grandmother got suspicious. They weren't returning phone calls. They weren't responding to any knocks on the door. They didn't put any new notes out. And it had been apparent that nobody had been in the home. Nobody was like feeding the chickens. Nobody was home. So she submitted a request to the police department to do a wellness check, to check on the family, to make sure that they were there. When the police arrived, they found no one in the home, and they actually didn't investigate the property any further. They just found no one home. And so they left. And then later on, Charles's brother Rodney and their friend Bob searched the house, ended up searching the house looking for Charles, and they found the stashed bodies in the outhouse and the chicken coop, which is crazy. I never know what it would be like to find a dead body, especially like a 2-year-old that had been beaten to death. Like, yeah, I was like, I couldn't see that. I would never recover. I don't know, but
You would already be scared of the chickens alone.
I know. I am scared of chickens. But when the bodies were found, the friends did notify the police, and the police issued a warrant for Charles Starkweather and Caril Fugate. So Charles and Carol drove to the farmhouse of a 70-year-old August Meyer, one of the family friends who lived a couple towns over in Bennett, Nebraska. So all of this is happening in Lincoln, Nebraska, where Charles is from. But a couple towns over in Bennett, Nebraska, they went to August Meyer's farmhouse. Charles kills him with a shotgun blast to the head, and he also kills August's dog, which is really sad. Oh, I forgot about the PowerPoint. So this is Charles. So
for some reason I thought he was ugly.
well, I mean, you always think like somebody who does such ugly and horrid things like would be ugly themselves, but they're always like really like charming and charismatic. Like Ted Bundy was like super charming and charismatic, but No, he's like a regular degular guy, like except how crazy he is.
That's
So as Charles and Carol, they escape to this farmhouse in Bennett, Nebraska. So that brings his death toll up to 5. And then they flee the area, so they run from the farmhouse. But then as they're fleeing the area, because they're in kind of rural farm country, the roads are not paved. They're like gravel and dirt road. And so the car actually ends up getting stuck in mud and they can't get out. So
Uh-oh.
they abandon the car and they're later picked up by 2 teenagers, Robert Jensen and Caril King. They're 2 teenagers local to Bennett. They pick them up as hitchhikers, and Charles actually ends up forcing them to drive back to an abandoned storm cellar where he shoots Robert in the back of the head. He attempts to sexually abuse Caril King, which is the female teenager that was in the vehicle, but he's unable to perform, which only enrages further, and he ends up just shooting her too.
Where's Carol in all this?
So there's 2 sides of the story because it's really like he said, she said. She claims that she was just there because he wanted her to be there and she wanted to keep her family safe. He claims that she was part of the crime, that she was like encouraging it, that she was just there having a good time. This story is kind of pieced together from evidence and also from the stories that they both told. So this event, from Charles' point of view, he claims that he killed Robert Jensen, the male teen that was in the vehicle. He did shoot him in the back of the head, but that Caril Fugate was the one to kill Caril King, which was the female teenager in the vehicle. So according to him, he killed Robert and she killed Caril. But according to Caril Fugate, she didn't kill anyone. She witnessed Charles kill Robert right away in the back of the head and then attempt to have intercourse with Caril King. It didn't work. And then he ends up shooting her. So those are kind of the 2 sides of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But then after Caril King is killed, the 2 fled in their car, in Robert's car.
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings the death toll up to, that brings the death count up to 7. So this is Charles and Carol. I should have shown that when I introduced Carol, but I forgot completely about the PowerPoint.
And when is this picture taken?
Before the crime spree. So like when they first originally started hanging out.
Oh, okay.
So they flee the town of Bennett, Nebraska in Jensen's car. They drove to a wealthy section of Lincoln. So they drive back to Lincoln, Nebraska, where they entered the home of Chester Ward and his wife Clara. So in order to gain access to the home, Charles stabs their maid Ludmilla Fensel to death. He also killed the family dog by breaking its neck. This is the first time that he does that, but he breaks its neck to keep it from alerting the wards, to keep it from barking. And he actually waits for Chester and Clara to return home. Clara arrived first, and she was alone and was also stabbed to death by Starkweather. Charles later, during his interrogation, he claims that he threw the first knife that stabbed Clara, and he insisted that Caril was the one who finished the job. She stabbed her the remaining times. Carol's story is that he stabbed Clara over and over again until she died. When Chester Ward, the husband, returned home, Charles shot him and killed him. Before the husband and wife returned home, while they were waiting, the newspaper actually got delivered to the home. So Carol's family had been reported dead. There was a manhunt for Charles and Caril. And so while they were at home waiting for Chester and Clara to return home, they opened the newspaper, saw that they were on the front page. They cut out their picture and also the picture of her parents. When the cops actually finally found Charles and Caril, they actually found these pictures on them. So they took these pictures on their whole spree.
And who did they find them on, him or her?
It doesn't say, but it does say that
Story.
This is why I'm not sure exactly what happened, because they said that this cast doubt on her culpability in the story and like her version of events, because at this point she would have known that her parents had been murdered or that her family had been murdered. So there's not a reasonable way to expect that she hasn't been participating in the murders all along up to this point.
Well, what if he said he was going to kill her too? Like, okay, your family's dead, but I'll
Yeah,
kill you if you don't come with me.
but she doesn't attempt to run away at any point. Like, she's
Oh.
not handcuffed or like anything, and Charles did teach her how to drive, so she could have like taken the car at any point.
Well, I mean, she's 14 though. She's like a little kid. I don't know.
I mean, fair enough, and that's why I said like I don't really know the extent of her involvement in all of these things that happen. Like, I don't know if she's like,
Well, because I'm like, where is she gonna go? Like, if she runs away from him, where is she gonna go? Her family's dead. He's the only
to the
person in her life.
police. I don't know. When I read that they had found the pictures and like they had read the newspaper, I was like, but then she would have known. And at that point, she would have known before Chester and Clara had died. So like before the husband and wife got home, she would have known that her family was dead, her parents were dead. So I don't know. She could have done any number of things, but she didn't. So it's at this point where I stopped believing that she was just like an innocent bystander.
I mean, it could be, but it could be like he manipulated her.
I guess. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like likely to me. It seems like she, I don't know.
Well, because he's crazy. If you love someone that's crazy, obviously you're a little crazy too.
Yeah, but crazy enough to be okay with murder?
Maybe she
I don't think
just loved him and she was like, oh, he's the only one I have left. I don't know.
I
Oh,
don't think I could ever date somebody that murdered anyone, let alone my family, like my mom and sister. Like,
yeah, no.
even at 14, like I know that's not right. Like I know that that's not correct. But I don't know. Maybe
Yes.
I mean this was
She
in the
had to
1950s.
she had to have
So
been crazy a little bit. She had to have been like out of her mind.
a little bit. But also like this was in the 1950s, and I mean I guess like it's not like they had the internet or like I mean they had TV, like TV was around. They had movies, but I guess maybe like she doesn't have knowledge of like different outlets she could use to like get help.
Yeah.
So I guess if I was 14 and I had no idea what a phone, like a cell phone was, I would have to find a payphone. I don't have change for the payphone.
Yeah.
Also, I might be afraid that I'm going to be implicated in all these murders. So like I guess I could see being afraid.
Well, what happens to her? Does she get put in jail too?
We're getting I'm just kidding.
Oh. I want to know. Do they get caught? What happens?
Of course they get caught.
They're still murdering
when
people
does
right now.
He was never caught. Oh my god, plot twist.
I thought about doing unsolved murders or like solved but like not caught, but I was like no, because
Uh-huh.
it would be me that like they listen to my podcast and they're like, oh, she knows who I am, and then like come and kills me. So like but there
Yeah.
are some
This is the story they're gonna listen to between killings.
you don't know, okay?
They're
They
gonna
could be
kill you
like
next.
it could be like I thought my story was dead and buried.
That's funny.
But yeah, there are some serial killers where they actually know exactly who killed everyone, but they're like in a foreign country that doesn't extradite, or they're like in the wind.
There's a lot of people that haven't been caught. That's crazy.
There's a lot of people who have been
What?
identified and they're not currently incarcerated. Like they're free.
Oh my
The
gosh, that is
scariest
so scary.
the scariest one being a child. So he committed all his murders, all his crimes when he was 8,
When he was 8?
and he was kept in juvenile detention, and now he's out and he's in the wind. Nobody knows where he is.
That's
So
crazy. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
they didn't want to try him as an adult. He's never checked up with his parole officers. He's never checked in with the county court. He's gone.
How old is he now?
I don't know. I don't remember.
9.
This happened last year. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that is so scary. Like anyone you could meet, you could have met them and not even know. Ooh, that's scary.
So anyway,
Oh yeah. They got caught.
not yet.
Okay.
So then after they murder Charles and Clara Ward, they escape in the Ward's car. It's a black 1956 Packard, which okay, so this is a Packard, a 1956 Packard.
Wow. That looks so
Um,
cool.
yeah, so I guess this family was rich. um, but they stole the Packard as well as all the jewelry from the house, and they fled Nebraska. So, like, they fled the state. The murders of the Wards and their maid, Ludmilla, sorry, I forgot her name for a second. The murders of the Wards and Ludmilla caused an uproar in Lancaster
What is,
County.
what is with all these weird names? Like, why are they naming people such weird things?
It's the 1950s, okay?
I was like, oh my gosh.
So these murders, when they came out in the newspaper, they caused widespread fear and panic.
As they should.
Law enforcement actually sent officers door to door in a house to house search for the perpetrators. Even the governor contacted the Nebraska National Guard, and the Lincoln chief of police called a block by block search of the city. And after several sightings of Charles and Caril were reported, the Lincoln Police Department was accused of incompetence for being unable to capture the pair. The local sheriff actually formed a posse by arming men he found in bars that were willing to join him. So this murder spree was actually causing widespread panic. Charles ended up realizing that they were going to need a new car because after all of the press over Ward's murders, obviously a 1956 Packard is a very standout car. Like they know.
Yeah, flashy.
Yeah, so they decided to ditch the car and they came upon a traveling salesman whose name is Merle Cullison. And he was sleeping in his Buick along the highway because he's a traveling salesman, so he sleeps in his car. So he had pulled off to on the shoulder of the highway and he was sleeping. Charles goes to wake him up. After he wakes him up, Charles ends up attempting to kill him by shooting him with the shotgun. However, the shotgun jams and he ends up not killing him. So Charles claims that at this point, the gun is taken from him by Caril, and Caril actually ends up shooting the salesman. But according to Caril, she never killed anyone, and Charles was the one that fired the second shot.
I wonder, do they have like unlimited bullets, or where do they get these bullets from?
Well, I mean, maybe he had them from, I don't know, maybe he robbed a store or something and nobody really mentions it in his spree. Maybe it's like a random, I don't know. I don't really know how many shotgun shells they'll sell to you.
Yeah.
I don't really know. But because as Charles is new to driving, he's only 19, he was not aware of what parking brake was or how to maneuver it. So he actually ends up stalling out the car because he keeps trying to drive it with the parking brake on. And then a passing motorist actually notices this. He notices that the car is stalled, and that the person driving is having trouble. So he pulls off to help him. And
No.
and it was a geologist named Joe Sprinkle, which Joe Sprinkle is such a happy name, and I'm so sad for him.
Oh, Mr. Sprinkle.
He had an ice cream shop.
And he stops to help Charles, but then Charles threatens him with the gun, and an altercation happens, so they end up fighting. At that moment, Natrona County Sheriff's deputy William Romer arrived on the scene. Caril ends up running to the sheriff, yelling something to the effect of, "It's Starkweather and he's going to kill me." So essentially turning Charles in. She sprints to the sheriff, basically snitching on him. Charles drives off.
She finally did it, right? So she finally told on him.
I mean, yeah.
Maybe she couldn't before. She didn't know how. You were so quick to judge her. Oh my gosh.
Look, she had so many opportunities. It wasn't until they were on the brink of getting caught where she was like, "Oh no."
Okay, she's not that smart. Okay, she's like not thinking.
Maybe she was the murderer the whole time. And he was scared of her.
She's like, "This is my out." So Charles ends up driving off, and he ends up being involved in a car chase with 3 officers, the sheriff's deputy that initially pulled off the road to help, as well as 2 other officers. The car chase ends up exceeding 100 miles per hour, and a bullet fired by one of the officers ends up shattering the windshield, and the flying glass cut Starkweather deep enough to cause bleeding. He stopped, surrendered, and was captured on January 29th, 1958. And he says that he only stopped because he thought he was bleeding to death.
He got 1 scratch and gave up. He can't handle no more. This is too much.
He saw the bleeding and he was like, no. I'm done. Oh my god.
He got scratched and said, "This is it for me."
Yeah, basically. The police officer is quoted. He says, quote, "He thought he was bleeding to death. That's why he stopped. That's the kind of yellow son of a bitch he is," unquote.
What does that mean? Yellow?
He's a coward.
Oh.
Means he's a coward.
Oh, is that really? Oh. I didn't know
that. I didn't know that either. That makes sense, though. That makes
He
sense.
was scared of bleeding to death, so he pulled over.
I've heard of a yellow-bellied coward. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just shorter.
Oh. I forgot about that saying. Yeah, like in Western movies.
Yeah, you yellow-bellied coward.
So they ended up getting they were caught in Douglas, Wyoming, because they jumped state lines after they killed Chester and Clara Ward. So Charles requested to be extradited from Wyoming back to Nebraska, where he's from. And he and Caril arrived in late January 1958. He believed that both states or either state would have given him the death penalty, so he wanted to be tried in Nebraska, where he was from. So at first, Charles does admit to saying that he kidnapped Caril and that she had nothing to do with the murders. However, after that initial confession, his story does change to the story where she was a part of the whole thing and she took pleasure in some of the killings. She killed some herself. So his original story upon confessing was that he had kidnapped Caril. So it kind of did really align with Caril's story. But later on, he recants and says that he was just trying to protect her, that really she was like an active participant.
What made him change his mind?
I'm thinking probably that she ratted him out. I think maybe like he was trying to like protect her somehow with like that initial story.
But if he was trying to protect her, he would like continue. He would be like, "Okay, yeah, it's all on me. She did nothing." Why would he recant it?
I don't know. Maybe
he's not very smart.
He just like wanted her to die too, or like wanted her to be killed too.
Maybe he thought that would be a romantic end to their crazy love story. I don't know.
Can they talk? When you're in custody, can you talk to?
No, I don't. No. I think they do it on purpose. They have like separate trials and everything.
Then I wonder if like some the police officer said something to him in the interrogation, like, "Oh, you're gonna let her off," or "Oh, you're gonna let her get away with it," or something like that.
Play to that, like what is that, machismo? He said he doesn't know what we're talking about. Like,
But yeah, but like he's
you know what I'm talking
maybe
about.
the maybe the police officer was like, "Oh, why are you gonna go to
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
Like,
know.
why are you
Maybe
letting
it's
her off free? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, he could have said something like that, but I don't know how I personally land. I still feel like she has some culpability because there were a lot of moments where she could have gotten away and told someone.
Like I think she was trying to get out of it the entire time, but she just didn't know how. She didn't want to
Maybe.
die. She didn't want to be shot. So she was trying to like appease him.
Maybe. I mean,
They had to play him too.
so the judge in the trial, Judge Harry Spencer, he also did not believe Caril Fugate's story that she was held hostage by Starkweather, as he determined she had numerous opportunities to escape. But Charles Starkweather was convicted. The jury deliberated for only 22 hours.
Only?
And
That's a long time.
he was actually only tried for the murder of Robert Jensen, the male teenager in the car that picked him up when they were hitchhiking. That was the only murder that he was tried for. And on May 23rd, 1958, he was sentenced to death, and he was sent to the electric chair in the Nebraska State Penitentiary in Lincoln, Nebraska at 12:04 a.m. on June 25th, 1959. So over a year later, he was sent to the electric chair.
Why was he only tried for one murder?
I guess that was the only one where they had enough evidence for conviction, or maybe that was the only conviction they needed.
Yeah.
They're like, just one and done. But according to the people present at his death, Starkweather gave no last words, but he did write a letter from prison to his parents, and he wrote, quote, "But Dad, I'm not really sorry for what I did, because for the first time, me and Caril have more fun," end quote. So he never apologized. He said it was fun. A little funny tidbit, the governor of Wyoming actually didn't believe in this penalty. Even though it's legal in Wyoming, he would not have given that sentence to him, and he would have served life in prison had he been tried in Wyoming. Caril Fugate, his accomplice or victim, depending on which which side you can see to, she was actually convicted as an accomplice because the judge did not believe her story. So she was convicted as an accomplice and received a life sentence on November 21st, 1958. However, she was paroled in June of 1976 after serving 17 and a half years at the Nebraska Correctional Center for Women. So she did spend 17 and a half years in prison for her role in the murder spree. Because it was in the 1950s, there's no like footage of the trial. Like I can't really tell if she was like apologetic and like crying, or like what about her demeanor really solidified for the judge that she was not like a kidnapping victim. But the story of Charles Starkweather and Caril Fugate did inspire a lot of feature films, such as The Sadist, Gun Crazy, and Natural Born Killers. I haven't seen any of these movies.
Of them. Yeah, I was like,
No.
I haven't seen any of them. Is that
No.
is that Drew Barrymore?
Yeah, it is. Drew Barrymore.
Oh my goodness.
There's also a lot of big names in Natural Born Killers. It had Woody Harrelson, who is featured on the cover, Juliette Lewis, Robert Downey Jr., and Tommy Lee Jones.
Wow.
Yep. There was also like a couple other movies. There was Badlands, California with a K, and actually a movie called Starkweather in 2004. So there was quite a lot of publicity surrounding these murders. But yeah, that is the story of Charles Starkweather.
Dang. Sad. Sad guy.
Yeah. Yep.